CTTB. Music Podcast.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. Actually, it's that most wonderful time of the year where we pretend that we've already had Christmas.
Exactly.
And we're not.
It's over. Don't sing any more Christmas songs. It is definitely not the 22nd of December now.
No, it's definitely not.
We are as festive as the usual Jules Holland crowd on Hoot Nanny.
Yeah. We're recording this in Tier 2.
Welcome to Hoot Nanny. You might think it's New Year's Eve, but it's really December the 8th in Maidstone. Maidstone Studios, everyone.
Last December the 8th.
Last December the 8th, yeah. With the crowds from last December the 8th, with the artists from their home.
Yeah.
Wherever that may be. Possibly.
Anyway, welcome listeners.
Hello. Hey. Oh.
It is the end of the world as we know it.
It is the end
but we feel fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, as Yaz once said, the only way is up.
Oh, indeed. Well, you know, it's funny. It's not all been bad. I think the music's been good.
Music has been good, surprisingly. Whilst our podcasting has been sporadic, it certainly hasn't been as sporadic. It's not as been as sporadic as last year. Let's be honest.
More regular.
Yeah. Last year was very sporadic. In fact, what fucked us up this year was the fact that we were allowed out of the house for briefly in the summer.
Yeah, then we went nuts.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a podcast?
That's when it all went. Yeah, that's where it all went wrong. Because no, we're doing a podcast. I can go out. Yeah.
I don't want a podcast anymore. I want to be free. But lockdown we are again. So
we are.
It's coming to you live from tier 7.
Yes. All the tiers.
All the tiers.
Yes, so as is usual at this point of the year, we look back on the year with our albums of the year list, but also some Daft Awards that we have had going for a few years as well. And a couple of new ones just because, well, you know, why not, frankly. We'll save the best for last, which is obviously the albums. But get on with the important awards. So every year, as you know, we usually have a shared musical activity outside of the podcast award. Strange enough, that's quite a short list this year. Usually we have like more than one contender for this particular award. This year, not so much.
Yeah,
it was pretty much the whole steady weekender. Literally before we got locked down.
That was the last thing anyone ever did. was March March the 5th, wasn't it? March the 6th, something like that.
Yeah, it was obviously it was also the last thing until they did an online gig, which I attended a couple of weeks ago. Was also the last thing the whole study had done as well.
Yeah.
But we went to week. Yeah, it was a week. The whole thing of the weekender is they did play 3 nights in London, and they've done so for the last 4. I think this was the 4th year. I think.
Yes, it was,
yeah.
And 5th. I think it was the 5th.
The 5th? Yeah, quite possibly.
The 5th. I don't know.
But it was the first year we'd done more than one night, so we actually went to 2 of the 3 nights this time round.
Yes, we did. And I bought the T-shirt. And I was a bit unsure of it at the time, but now I have a tour sheet T-shirt with London 2020 on it, which is probably one of the rarest tour T-shirts anyone will ever see of any band.
Well, yeah, unless they bought it online as when people are just trying to get rid of stock. Yeah. Pretty bought your tour T-shirts that you're not going to use. Okay, stick them online. Click this item.
Yeah, I actually paid for it with cash, which was in the early part of 2020. You will remember is something we used to carry around with us.
When people were quite happy for you to touch their hands exchanging money, yes.
Exactly.
Oh, the good old days.
I'm still wearing it as well. I know I was wearing it last week when we did our Christmas show. I haven't changed since then.
Or showered.
No, it's a protest.
Yeah. Our next award is the Honorary Listeners Award, which, is the Honorary Listeners Award and tends to go to the same people every year because they're the few people we know that have actually stayed the course with our rather erratic podcast release schedule. So hello to Alison, hello to Spencer, hello to Neil. But also hello to anybody new that's joined us in the last few months, because bizarrely, I actually, for the first time ever, I've never done this because, because I'm me. I actually posted a link to our podcast of not the last one, the one before, on my LinkedIn page.
Ooh, professional.
And suddenly several people kind of went, "Oh, you do a podcast?"
Ah.
Like, yeah, can I do? Yeah. Oh, I've subscribed.
I might do.
So for all those people that have did that and said I've subscribed and weren't lying and haven't already stopped listening after the last podcast, hello.
I'd also say hello to a gentleman called Paul, who is a big Beatles fan, who may have tuned in as well for this. In which case I say, sorry, Paul, this is not the one you want to be listening to. It's last week's Christmas show.
Indeed. Another award that we give out every year is the jokingly Ping Award, which is the best reference to Todd Rundgren. We started off many years ago when I used to mention Todd a lot. I don't think I mentioned Todd that much in this
Certainly have.
podcast.
You have, you liar. You've mentioned... Not in the last couple of podcasts, no, but definitely there has been a mention, I'm sure.
However, I still think the best mention was probably when you sent me news that Taylor Swift had released a new album, and I went onto the Guardian's website, and literally the first comment I saw under the Guardian's website by a guy or woman called, I think, K-Appa Head or something, was along. I wrote down something. Yep. Isn't the problem that very few artists have the flexibility to write different song types? Prince can move in different types, as could Todd Rundgren, etc. You're thinking,
Ping.
Exactly. There's the winner.
There's the winner. So, J Afra, or whatever your name was.
Yeah, K-Appa Head. K-Appa Head.
K-Afra Head. The award.
If AHH are listening.
The award's
in the post.
The award is in the post. The post is unfortunately very slow due to COVID. But we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Yes. Next up, Classic Gone Cobra Award for Worst Album of the Year. And actually, this was a bit of a problem this year because, as you said at the start, partly because we haven't done as many podcasts as we perhaps would like to do, but also partly because this year, more than any year, my random selection of albums seem to kind of coalesce with things that actually have been very well reviewed, just generally, on lists and stuff. It means that we haven't really covered many albums that would even get close to being in the worst album of the year list. Probably the two albums that we were kind of least enthused by were Bruce Hornsby and the Range, No Secure Connection, and Freddie Ford's You Can Be the Sun. But I think you'd probably agree that even those weren't bad albums per se. They just weren't great compared to what they were surrounded by.
No, I mean, I'm surprised you included the Hornsby connection, because whilst in my opinion it was a bit middle of the road, and I did wonder, what is this? It was certainly feels harsh to nominate it for this classic award of ours. the Gold Cobra Award. And I'm sure when we announce the overall winner in a moment, we'll explain the origin of it.
Indeed, yes. I think that's true. And yeah, I think the problem with these two albums is that they've failed to meet that kind of the standard we expect for a Gold Cobra Award winner, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Drake got there a couple of years ago, but usually people struggle to quite get to that level of brilliance that's deserving of this. For those of you who don't already own Gold Cobra by Limp Bizkit,
Google it.
This award was named after them several years ago now, when both Pete and I couldn't believe how frankly awful it was.
Possibly the worst album we've ever reviewed.
Yes. And just for the record, yes, we both like Rollin', Rollin', Rollin'. It's fine. We're not saying that Limp Bizkit have never recorded any good songs. We're just saying that the Gold Cobra album was shite.
Yes. I was reminded recently that I was also, a very long time ago, an admirer of their soundtrack to Mission Impossible 2 as well.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, that was hardly peak Limp Bizkit as well. I mean, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, Fred, if you're out there anywhere and you want to come and collect your award, you know where we are. Speaking of Drake, actually, the Drake Award for Worst Song of the Year.
Oh.
Again, I felt, yeah.
How did we come about the naming of that award?
I don't know. You know as much as I do that I love Drake. There was one track on that album he released that lasted 33 seconds that I thought was brilliant.
Yes, you really weren't a fan of that record. Although it has to be said,
No.
Whereas I think many of our podcasting contemporaries would rave about Drake, and no doubt he's a damn sight more talented than the oeuvre of the Gold Cobra Limp Bizkit album. It did strike me as a very miserable album.
Yes. Anyway, for this particular award, I mean, whilst, you know, I'm sure you can throw in some nominations if you want, but I think there's only one nomination really worthy of the true genius of this award, and that is John Bon Jovi for his recently released cover version of Fairy Tale of New York. For those who haven't heard this, don't bother, first of all. John takes on both roles of the song, because, you know, why not? And it's, yeah. I think it's probably as bad as you're thinking it is.
I haven't, until obviously the nominations came through, I wasn't aware of this. And even now, as you describe it to me, and I know you can't see me, my head is firmly in my hands at the thought of John Bon Jovi doing a duet to himself and murdering, undoubtedly, one of the Christmas classics. I mean, that song has taken a beating this season anyway, with the so-called radio edit, which is a storm in a teacup in itself, because that's been around for about 20-odd years anyway. But in this age of cancel culture, that seems to have upset a few people.
It is, and that's a shame. You can understand, but again, you can understand why it's that classic thing where I think we might have discussed on the podcast before. Actually, it's that classic thing where the use of language in a song is, in today's terms, unacceptable. But at the time, it was sort of unacceptable at the time. But the argument around it is that, certainly from Shane McGann's point of view, is that the song is written about characters, and the character is using that language.
Yeah, you don't need to convince me.
Not the thing.
And I'm sure BBC, as I say, had that edit 30 years ago.
But then similarly, you can think, you have thousands of songs now that are just full of swearing. Just generally, Scott gets purient and going, "It's terrible. People swearing in songs." But it's funny. Growing up, you very rarely heard swearing in songs. Certainly when I was younger, probably slightly creeping a bit more with you, Pete, but still nothing compared to now. And it's like
I remember
people didn't swear in songs. Now it's finding songs where people don't swear in them is quite difficult.
For me, it's I'll always remember, and again, we're going back about 30 years. I think Radio 1 did some very amusing radio edit of Prince's Sexy MF, as they called it.
Yes.
And it began with like a 30-second intro from Simon Bates.
Master Bates.
Yes. Hello, this is Simon Bates. What you're about to hear is a of a song. And I'm not kidding you. Google it, someone, because this thing goes on for about 30 seconds while the song is starting to play in the background. You sexy mother. Tastefully done, Simon. Tastefully done.
But it is weird because it generally is weird. I had this discussion with someone recently, and as you know, I do swear a significant amount, but partly due to my Glasgow upbringing. But it is weird that we've gone from a situation where you very rarely got swearing to it becoming very odd in pop songs if someone's not saying, even if someone's not saying shit or something in a song, rather than that. It's strange.
I know.
We say.
Language changes evolve. I feel we've got ourselves diverted into a debate here.
Let's have a heated debate.
Imagine it's like if the Grammys or the Academy Awards suddenly turned into question time.
I would pay for that. Although I say that, speaking of interesting use of language, let's move on to the Wireless Network Standards Mobile Phone Song Award.
Well, congratulations, John Bon Jovi, by the way.
Yeah. Absolutely, John.
Oh, dear.
Here for you, man. Here for you.
Sorry.
The Wireless Network Standards Mobile Phone Song Award. The nominations.
Sorry.
Yeah. Cardi B for WAP featuring the Stallion and Bree Runaway Little Nokia. Obviously, there were a few people around that were as surprised as I was hearing that Cardi B had released a song about the wireless application protocol. And perhaps few as shocked as I was when I actually heard the song to discover that apparently it wasn't about the wireless application protocol at all. Instead, it is one of the finest records in its own way that you will hear this year. Because if you have not heard Cardi B's WAP, Google it, listen to it. You will perhaps be sat there with your mouth agog for a while. But it is a unique, genius piece of pop music. And you'll also discover what WAP stands for, which apparently isn't Wireless Application Protocol. Similarly, slightly cleaner, although only just, as Bree Runaway with Little Nokia. Slightly back to Ashley Stranger conversation we had in the last podcast, talking about the return of proper rock guitars to pop music.
Yeah.
This has some good crunching guitar in it as well. I admit it's kind of hard to pick a winner between these. I kind of prefer the Bree Runaway song from a kind of rocky point of view, but the Cardi B song is just kind of genius in its own way.
Well, what can I say? I mean, I feel the award should go for you for such a brilliant pun on words. So tell me, who does the Wireless Network Standards Mobile Phone Song Award of the Year go to?
I think it has to be Cardi B.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Which is...
And obviously Megan Thee Stallion for her contribution to said song.
So Bruce Hornsby, take your non-secure connections somewhere else. We have a winner there.
Well, yeah, see, actually, there's a point. See? Now, if Bruce got together with Cardi B, could be going somewhere.
I can see why you stuck this on LinkedIn.
Best album written and recorded in lockdown 2020.
Oh,
Niche.
we won't be doing this next year, or will we?
Yeah. Christ, let's hope.
Let's pray.
So, the nominations are Taylor Swift, Folklore, Taylor Swift, Evermore, Paul McCartney 3, and Charlie XCX, How I'm Feeling Now, which was the first of the lockdown albums to come out. Good 4 albums, really.
Yeah, this is tough. I know. Okay, jokes aside, this is tough because actually, you know, I think we touched on this on the last podcast with the first of those 3 albums that they really, and it sort of makes me optimistic for 2021 and the music that we might hear, because they really have come from a place where artists have had the time to think introspectively and think about, what they want to do. I mean, with Taylor Swift, we're very much going back to her roots through those 2 albums. 2 very similar yet distinct albums, as I think we discussed. And similarly with Paul McCartney, an opportunity for him to be experimental without a producer or someone keeping him in check. And I mean that in a good way.
Although, isn't there? I did notice there was a trailer on the TV the other day for something that him and Rick Rubin had done together.
Oh my lord! Really?
Might have been an interview or something like that, but there was definitely there wasn't. I'm not confusing Rick Rubin with Idris Elba before people kind of go, wasn't he on talking to Idris Elba the other day? No, definitely on. It's probably on one of the streaming services. There's a thing that's fairly certain is Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney.
No, the only thing I've seen over Christmas is there's an itty bitty trailer for Get Back, the long awaited Beatles film that's been or should I say not redirected, but directed by Peter Jackson.
That'd be fucking lovely.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother watching it next year. I'll wait for the expanded DVD pack to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked old Peter Jackson when he made like really short, kind of 80-minute horror films. Before people gave him some money, he went, "Yeah, we can go on for hours."
Yeah, and he does, and he really does.
Yeah, thankfully, you can do it in New Zealand. They're fine.
New Zealand looks gorgeous, though. Probably better than the Beatles in 1969, to be fair.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm reckoning it's
getting lost in a hole here. Again.
I know this is the thing because I think you lean towards. I think what the award will go to Taylor Swift. With me leaning more toward one, you more toward the other. Maybe.
But before, whoa, let's just take a step back there. Before we do that, I have to say, for this particular award, I'm kind of minded to show Charlie XCX some love here, because whilst
she was the first,
it's also possibly the rawest of the collection as well. I think Paul McCartney.
Yes, and also, obviously the thing behind the Charlie XCX thing was the fact that she kind of reached out to fans to help kind of write the lyrics to the songs and all that kind of stuff. So it was very kind of literally, whereas no offence to Paul and Taylor Swift, their albums were, well, they weren't secretively done because they were just done and they were released like everything else. The Charlie XX thing was very much I'm making an album. Hey, get involved.
Yeah.
Including we're going to release some videos, so I need some clips of you going mad at home that we can cut together and turn into the videos for the songs, kind of thing.
And surely that, when you think about all the other artistic endeavours in other fields, is more in the spirit of a lockdown album.
You've taught me around, Pete. Yes. Charlie XX, How I'm Feeling Now. Best written recorded album, Lockdown 2020.
There you go. The jury has spoken.
Indeed. We have a Best Song of the Year award. Do you have a Best Song of the Year, Pete? Do you have Best Song of the Year?
This is usually the one where it's exposed how little I do my homework. I would say there have been a number of songs this year that have obviously impacted me, touched me, reached out to me. Many of them are probably old songs, to be honest, because I spent quite a bit of time in the first lockdown going through a number of my older playlists and collections of music, perhaps even transferring a number of them to Spotify, just so I had them to hand.
I think that's probably acceptable for this year. It is. This year is, as we've discussed, a unique year in many ways. So,
but again, there's probably too numerous there to mention. I think on the last podcast we mentioned a couple of tracks, in particular that sort of sum up the year. And I think Wildfires from Soul, on Black Is, their Untitled album called Black Is,
yes,
as we discussed on the last podcast, is probably a recent song I've been listening to. Similarly, Taylor Swift's Willow, I think, encompasses everything that's been great about her two albums that have come out recently. Yeah. I know we're probably not going to mention it later. I may have mentioned in the past that I am a big Pet Shop Boys fan. It may have.
Don't think anyone ever picked that up, mate. Don't think anyone picked that up.
I know. There is a track on their album called "Hoping for a Miracle," which, as a title, turned out to be quite prophetic when it was released at the start of this year. And it's probably
I do remember that track.
And it's one of their better, slower numbers from Hotspot, their album this year. So I'd throw that into the mix as well. That's my 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on Wildfires, which probably means Wildfires will be the winner of the award. Similarly, on albums that we reviewed this year and tracks that have stayed with me through the year. Halsey's "You Should Be Sad," one of my favourite songs at the start of the year, and it's still
great song.
It's still stayed with me.
Yeah.
Also on the pop side of things, Dua Lipa's "Physical."
Oh yes,
as well.
Yes.
Just a great pop tune. And great single. Outside of the stuff I listened on the podcast, one of my favourite tracks of the year was a surprising track of the year. Song by Coheed and Canberra, who are an American band, and they recorded a sequel to Rick Springfield's "Jesse's Girl," which is recording a sequel to songs is a bizarre idea at the best of times, but this is really weird, and also something bizarre that came out of lockdown and came from a chance thing of Rick Springfield basically posting a couple of links to Coheed and Cambria's songs saying, "Quite like this band," and then they got in touch with him saying, would kind of like to do a sequel to Jesse's Girl, because we kind of think, the whole thing of Jesse's Girl is Jesse gets, you're kind of going, Jesse's a friend, and I'm going to nick his girlfriend, and we're thinking, actually, maybe Jesse's the person that got it right, and actually his girlfriend's a bit of a nutter, and your life's going to be ruined by this. Let's look 20 years hence and see what happened, and record a song. And they actually had a Zoom call with Rick Springfield, basically pitching him this idea, and he's going, "Yeah, sure, if you want to, yeah." And then they recorded the song that incorporates part of the original riff of the song. Includes Rick Springfield in it as well, and it's genius. It's genuinely just a really good pop rock song. So if you haven't seen it, Coheed and Cambria featuring Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl 2. It's actually, there is a video for it and everything, and it's surprisingly good.
Brilliant.
Surprisingly foot tappy, good. So that would be my one that's not from stuff that we listen to, but I think from ones we have, I would agree that it's hard to beat Salt Wildfire's really, really top tune. So go listen. Strange enough, we may mention Salt again in a minute. Because we've now reached that point where we're going to go,
Oh, the lights are going down. It's the serious part of the show.
Yeah. What are the albums of the year? So as per usual, we'll do a quick rundown of the overall top 20, and then we'll go through our individual ones with some
this is the bit you like.
Additional comments. So
The list. Let's do it.
Counting down from 20, the overall top 20. Number 20, Sports Team Deep Down Happy. Number 19, Perfume Genius, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. 18, Chloe and Halle and The Ungodly Hour. 17, Seagulls, Open Up Your Head. 16, Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit Reunions. 15, Nova Twins, Who Are the Girls. 14, Caribou, Suddenly. 13, Paul McCartney, I think I've heard of him. 3. It's 3 already, well done. 12, PSB. Hotspot,
Hey.
we heard of that a minute ago as well. 11, Rina Sawayama. 10, Salt, Untitled, Rise and Black Ears. Kind of cheating, 2 albums, but hey. Kind of feel like one in a kind of way. 9, Soccer Mommy, Colour Theory. 8, Moses Sumney Gray. 7, Charlie XX, How I'm Feeling Now. 6, Taylor Swift, Evermore. 5, Taylor Swift, Folklore. 4, Bob Dylan, Wild and Rowdy Ways. 3, Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. 2, Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia. And number 1, Halsey with...
Yes.
Whilst we will go through our individual ones in a minute, I think basically the fact that Charlie XCX, Dua Lipa and Halsey are all in the top 7 shows that we were kind of in touch with our pop side.
They were all in my top 5 at some point, along with the Pet Shop Boys, obviously. I think, of course, it was a pop year for me, and Dua Lipa I had regularly. It slipped down towards the end, regularly in my own top 3. Physical just embodied all of that. The track you mentioned a few moments ago. It is just a perfect pop album.
I'd also had in common with it for me, had in common with the Rina Sawayama album, the fact that both of them were the Dua Lipa one. It was even shorter. Both quite short albums and just short pop songs and to the point.
Exactly.
So there's no kind of like I'm just going to throw 20 songs on this. It's like here's 11 songs. They're all 3-minute pop songs. Let's get through it. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's been very heavy pop, sort of throwaway pop, but in a good way kind of year. When I look at my own list and look at where we've landed with that overall top 10, I mean, that is, it's not exactly my top 10, but it could have been my top 10, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And obviously we've got Taylor Swift in there that normally we're thinking poppy, and yet her 2 albums are...
Yeah, exactly.
they're not unpoppy. You know, they are compared to a recent output, but they're still
no, exactly compared to the rest of the list. Probably not so much pop, but very much a pop star there. And then with Soccer Mummy, I think a sort of recognition of something else that's bubbling back up this year for me, which has been the sort of classic indie album.
Yes.
And you mentioned
that was one of the first things.
Girls are down there.
The first or second podcast as well.
Exactly. Yeah, she was early. She was early there, but then we had Seagulls, and then we had Sports Team as well this year.
Yes, good indie.
So that's right, bubbling back up. I think as a theme, maybe one to watch. But the other theme from our top 10 is this whole sort of almost, I keep describing it as alt jazz. It's not alt jazz because it's a whole mishmash of stuff. It's jazz, it's funk, it's soul, it's something else. And I think Grey by Moses Sumney and the two soul albums really encapsulate that as well. As does Caribou, actually, in a kind of more of an ambient kind of way. There's definitely something else there that we've really tapped into this year, which I think we haven't done before, or perhaps haven't seen in such strength before.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. But also, I'd add the other thing that the top 20 reaches out to me with is the fact that of people stretching out of pigeonholes and trying to mix things up a bit and occasionally challenge listeners. So the Moses Sumney album, perfect example of that. It's a beautiful record, but it's not without its challenges. Fiona Apple album, similarly,
challenging.
Really clever album, very challenging musically. The arrangements of it are spectacularly good. Perfume Genius album, Caribou album, and the Salt albums, maybe, and Rina Sawayama, we discussed. It's and even to a degree Halsey again, but don't mention the whole thing of mixing up rock, pop, and various other kind of genres. It's nice to see that people are. I mean, maybe we've just been reviewing the wrong albums over the last couple of years, as we've discussed many times. We're thinking maybe we just listened to the wrong albums. Maybe it was a great year last year, and we were just listening to the albums that weren't that great. But this year has felt better. I mean, if you look at if you look at our top 20, even if you look at our individual 20s, there's a reasonable mixture of styles of music going on here. And I think we were both discussing offline when we were doing lists that early on when we were thinking we were going to miss out some podcasts and stuff, thinking, I don't know, it might be hard pulling a 20 together. And I started trying to pull my 20 together, and I thought, actually, I could do most of the albums I've listened to this year. I'd quite happily have in a list, and quite happily, there was like, for example, neither of us have got Run the Jewels in our top 20s. And believe me, it's not because Run the Jewels 4 is not a great album. Because it is pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah. That's a pretty solid album. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. And there are several other albums, Laura Marling, that we also mentioned, and a few other things that are, again, really good albums that are not here because of other records, not because they're not good, but because we just thought the records were a bit better.
Brandy Clark she's not.
Yes, finished quite. Yeah, exactly. Finished quite low in both of our top 20s, and yet it's still a bloody good record.
Exactly. I think.
So, would you like to tell the dear listeners about what your personal?
Well, I think where we've landed is pretty good, because the overall, continuing the trend of us landing and picking the winner, Halsey, for me, sort of encapsulates everything we just said about that sort of combination of styles and everything. Was very much my number one. But to be honest with you, as I've suggested, I have had a rotation of pure pop records there.
Yeah.
The Pet Shop Boys have been my number one album. Dua Lipa's been my number one album. Halsey's been my number one album. They've all been there as number one albums for me throughout the course of this year on some sort of rotation. We've landed with Halsey, and that's where I landed, and that's cool. That for me very much encapsulated. Certainly, the first half of the year was very much pop driven. I think as the year has gone on, and maybe impacted by what we've collectively been through, I've started to think more about the records we've heard subsequently. And I guess over time, they've started to be influenced by events as well. And we talked about Salt a great deal in the last podcast, so I won't regurgitate that. But again, with the Moses Sumney record, with both the Taylor Swift albums, you start to get a sense of where we are in terms of the music we're listening to and some of the other things that appeal. And I think in my own list, that starts to sort of become a thing. Certainly in my top 10, their albums are there. And in my next sort of 11 to 20, then we sort of have a run of perhaps the more indie rock albums that, Bob Dylan, again, a really great album from Bob Dylan. You knew this year that would happen. Paul McCartney suddenly pulled one out from somewhere. And then we have, I mentioned the two indie albums, the sports team, the Seagulls. The other day, I was watching something with my daughter on Disney Plus, and Chloe and Halle turned up. And I was like, oh, it's Chloe and Halle. So
they're acting.
Exactly.
They're acting bit rather than
the singing bit. Well, they were doing a bit of both. It's been quite an interesting year in that respect as well. And then some of those returning favourites. I mean, you mentioned Laura Marling, just outside my own 20. Brandy Clark, just inside my own 20. The Strokes had a comeback this year. It just scraped into my 20, but maybe it trampled over Run the Jewels on the way to get there. So it's interesting that, we've seen a few other sort of returns that normally might have been like, oh, great, the Strokes are back. But actually, there's just been so much else this year as a consequence, perhaps, of where we are, that it's just changed everything. I'm really encouraged, and I said this, I think, at the very top. I think next year is going to be brilliant for music. I think there's going to be so much pent-up energy and creativity. And let's fast forward 12 months, and hopefully I won't have egg on my face. But yeah, I think there's going to be so many great albums next year as a consequence of collectively what we've been through. And I think we're only just starting to see the tip of the iceberg there.
I agree. And I think what was kind of amusing for me looking at, every year when we're reviewing stuff, we also look at the Album of the Year website, who kind of pull together all the critics' top albums of the year from various magazines, sites, newspaper sites, and muso sites. And I don't think we've ever been so on point ever in our entire lives than this year. Because one of the top 20.
Look, 11 years.
To start off, we reviewed 14 of the top 20. Their top 20.
That's a first for us.
So the ones that we've reviewed and the features. So Charlie XCX finished 19th, Chloe and Halle 18th, Fontaines DC 16, which was again just outside my top 20. A good album. We reviewed it a couple of podcasts ago. Not quite as good as the previous one, but fine. Salt Untitled Rise was at 14, Moses Sumney at 13, Rina Sawayama at 10, Bob Dylan at 9, Salt Untitled Black Ears at 8, Perfume Genius Set My Heart on Fire immediately at 6, Dua Lipa 5, Taylor Swift Folklore at 4,
Wow.
Run the Jewels at 3, Phoebe Bridgers, who just scraped into my list, Punisher came at 2, and Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, was the critics' choice of Album of the Year. Although to be fair, the critics have always quite liked Fiona Apple, even in days when I hated Fiona Apple, so that's perhaps not a surprise. But this year, actually, I do think it was well deserved because it's still a really interesting and challenging record in equal measure. Again, not the easiest album to put on. I've put it on in our house before and been asked to turn it off.
It's that old jazz. I don't even know if old jazz is a thing or if I've just made it up. It is a thing, I think. I'm probably misapplying it as a term or a genre. But it just seems to fit.
We say it's alt jazz.
Yes, not old jazz.
Yes. Old jazz as opposed to new old jazz.
We didn't even mention Porridge Radio, which was
again another great album that didn't make it into our top 20s. That's and you. I know we both liked that album at the start of the year.
It just got overtaken by so many great records, but it is still a great record. Yeah. You know.
It is. I listened to it about a week ago, in fact, because when we were doing the thing, I was trying to think of some of the albums that were reviewed were still quite fresh in my mind. I'd listened to more often than others, and that was one I hadn't listened to probably since the start of the summer. So I gave it a listen again, and it is still a good record. And a band that I think have still got places to go as well. So I'm hopeful of even better stuff from them in the future.
Cool.
Or maybe not. But I think it will be. Just to say that we also had Jason Isbell and the 400 unit in the list. I'm only saying that because they've also released a new album, which is the recording of a gig we saw them at the Roundhouse. So it's the only reason I mentioned it.
It's one of
bizarrely, I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but yes, it was
one of our shared musical experiences.
It's funny. It's shared experience. But yeah. It's one of those funny things where they just saw a tweet saying, we've released a live album, and thinking, that's odd, given the current situation. It's like, oh, they've released our album from 3 or 4 years ago at a gig that me and Pete were at. Yeehaw.
Exactly.
So I think for next year, what I want is more of the same, really.
Yeah, but with more one-to-one podcasting.
Well, yes, that. Well, we've literally had. I don't know. We did the first. Actually, we did the first.
Yeah, we got a couple.
The first couple in person, didn't we? And then we had the one in the middle. So.
Did we actually do one in the middle? I don't think we did.
Yeah.
No. We've been online all year.
Maybe I'm just imagining it.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I don't think you've let me in your house for months.
To be fair, I haven't let many people in my house.
To be honest with you, I've had no one in the house for a long time.
I don't want other members of my family in the house most of the time, to be honest.
Oh God, what a world!
Although given that they go, one of them goes out to school, and one of them goes out to another job. Quite often I get my wish, and I'm literally the only person in the house, and I think, God, this is great.
And that is 2020 summed up in a sentence.
It is. But it's dark is even worse, because when it's dark, you suddenly realise, okay, it's now dark. I was meant to get up and go do some exercise, wasn't I? And I've been sat doing nothing not doing nothing. Been sat working since 8 o'clock. It's now 4 o'clock. It's dark. What am I going to do?
Listen to more music, mate.
I mean, before anyone shouts at the podcast saying, "Go for a jog, you lazy fucker." No. Although I do need, to be fair, I do need to try and start doing the couch to 5K again.
Yeah, we all do. We're all carrying that.
One of these days, I'll get to the end of it. I've
been on. Believe me, I've been on that journey a couple of times this year already.
Yeah, I've got to week 8 twice.
Well done.
And then not. But yeah. Anyway, I think next year, going to be good. We're going to get. Actually, I just think of there's lots of albums we didn't review this year that also I like. Just want a big shout out to Bruce Springsteen, who released yet another album that was obviously not going to be setting the world in light, but was fun and Brucey, and that's what you needed in this year. Fun and Brucey.
Excellent.
Anyway, until next year.
Well, until next year, thank you all for listening.
Indeed.
And Happy New Year to all our listeners. And wherever we are 12 months from now, let's hope it's better than this.
And let's hope we're doing this in person. Because it'll be short.
Indeed.